Hello, I'm Margaret Graziano with Keen Alignment, and today we're going to talk about response agility, leading and recalibrating in times of change and uncertainty. And regardless of the position you're in, we're going to speak to you today. I'm going to speak to you today as if you are the CEO of your own life, if you are the master of your domain, and as you are responsible for your reaction to anything, to good, bad, being able to stand in the fire, being able to have the grit to recalibrate as necessary. Because let's face it, we are currently living in one of the most complex, chaotic, ambiguous, confusing times in human history. What we thought was secure is no longer secure. There's systemic distrust in every facet of government, healthcare, organizational, and even family. And so, what response agility is about how to own your stuff, how to be clear and live at the highest level of effectiveness for you. So, let's get started. Our key points to this training are responding to adversity, stress, and pressure with power and ease, navigating thoughtfully and effectively, especially when that's the last thing you think you're capable of doing. And I'm going to make no bones about it. This takes practice. It takes effort. I've been working on it religiously or disciplinarily for the last 10 years. And I was super challenged in COVID and led this program over and over and over again because it grounded me and it also grounded my clients and came out of COVID better than ever. Key point, take ownership of your experiences and recalibrate as necessary. So that's what we're going to learn today. So I'd like to talk to you about Chris. His name is Chris Prendergast. And I coached Chris for about a year and a half. It was part of a major transformation of a company of about 450 people. And Chris was an engineer who was focused on quality. And so one of the things that Chris did is he walked through the plant and told people when things were out of quality. And he wasn't the most popular guy in the company. As a matter of fact, when I walked through the plant with Chris, people would turn their head away and say, "Oh, there's Chris." And when we went through the leadership training, he said, "Maji, I want to be an influencer of positive change. I want people to understand my passion for quality and I want to change things." So we did a lot of work with him. And one of the junctures was this whole self-awareness piece. He read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. And then he did a 360 and he got feedback from other people on how he was showing up. And then he interviewed his wife and then he talked to people directly. And then he did his own self-evaluation. And then he did a leadership assessment. And Chris had programming from a very young age to look at what was wrong. It's why he went into quality engineering in the first place. And through the course of his leadership, he created a calling. And his calling is being an inspiring man of integrity, like helping people see that integrity in the workplace can actually be fun and inspiring. And over the course of that 18 months, Chris completely shifted how he was perceived in the organization. And it was through really grounding himself in this thing called response agility. So let's go deeper into what it is. All human beings have four fundamental needs, including you. They have a need for certainty, a need for novelty or change, excitement, a need for connection, and a need for significance. So what is significance? Significance is my job is important. I'm important. What I do here matters, and I bring value. Novelty is stretch, growth, change, an ability to look at something that I've never done before and be excited about the possibility. And then who do I get to be as a result of doing it? I get to change. I get to grow. Certainty is I know what I'm needed. I know what's needed from me in my role. I know what my department is up to. I know what our goals are, and we communicate fluidly. There's not a lot of ambiguity. We're clear. And connection is an opportunity to feel like I get to see you, you get to see me at work. Now, during COVID or the pandemic, we didn't have any of these things. This is why we were in such a state of disarray. And when our fundamental needs are not met, our brain goes into a loop of searching for these things. And if it cannot find these things, we are triggered. Our amygdala, our brain is hijacked by our amygdala and says, you are in trouble. Warning, Will Rogers. And then the adrenals release cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine in high doses. And it attacks our ability to think clearly or see realistic outcomes. Not a healthy place to be, but we all go there. And so when the fundamental needs are not being met, there's triggers for what sets us off. It's our fundamental needs are not being met. We understand and want our spiritual needs to be met, and they're not, or when something we value is stepped over. So we'll talk about that as well. Those are fundamental needs. The spiritual needs are growth and contribution. Contribution is when I am contributing above and beyond, and I'm not contributing to get anything out of it. I don't need acknowledgement. I don't need a thank you. It could be random acts of kindness or volunteerism. And growth is I get to step beyond who I know myself to be, whether it's because I had a coach or I went to a workshop or I am trying out something new. I'm on an innovation team and I'm trying out some new ways of operating, and I am growing. And then my values are that which I hold true to myself. Like I hold a value of family. I hold a value of being healthy, of being active. Well, I can tell you for sure during COVID and during the pandemic, and even sometimes when I'm working with an organization that is in complete disarray, I've got to like hold on to something. Oh my God, this place is crazy. I got to have some certainty. Maybe that's my morning ritual, or I have to have some opportunity to stretch myself, like go on a vacation to a foreign country or connect with my BFF so that I know someone loves me, or significance, like make a list of all the good things that I have done. But the fact is, when our fundamental human needs are not being met, when our spiritual needs are not being met, and when our values are not being met, we are triggered. We are put into reactive state. So we're going to show you a movie about some of the things that are triggering people now. Take a moment, watch it. It's like 3 minutes, and write down some notes of how do these things impact you? How does observing these things in today's news impact you? Studies on neuro-linguistic programming and the brain tell us that we've got about 140,000 bits of information coming at us at any given moment in time. And on top of that, the human brain is manufacturing 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, with 85% of those thoughts being negative and repetitive. So when I'm left to my own subconscious devices, which studies also indicate that's 95% of the time, mostly I'm in the past, I'm reflecting on the past, or reminiscing on the past, or regretting the past, or I'm anticipating the future. So I'm not in the present, and I'm either anxious about the future, or I'm hoping for the future, or I'm forecasting the future, but I'm not here now. When we're here now, we're present. We're in the present moment, and we are using our highest level of intelligence. When we're in the past, when we're in the future, we're not here now, and we're not using our highest level of intelligence. When our fundamental needs are met, we have a better opportunity to be in the present. When our values are being met, we have a better opportunity to be in the present. When we're taking care of ourselves and putting our own oxygen mask on first, we have a better opportunity to be in the present. So I'll explain all that to you as we go through this training. So let's watch the video. So when we are thrust with all of this information coming in through social media, when we're listening to the news, when we're driving down the highway, when we see messages from billboards, when we get alerts on our phone that there's a kidnapping, whatever it is, 140,000 bits of information, the brain can only hold on to 120. When we have those thoughts, those 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day that the National Science Institute says we have, and 85% of them are negative and repetitive. And when we don't have certainty, when we don't have enough novelty, when we don't feel significant or important, or when we lose connection, we have three triggers: isolation, stress, and uncertainty. And this has our brain go in a loop looking for homeostasis. We're not in homeostasis. Our sympathetic nervous system is on high drive, telling us something is wrong, and our brain is looping. So we have things like panic attacks, or we go into stress or pressure or fear or frustration, or even worse, hopelessness. And it's because there is too much input coming in that's negative, and that's triggering those things we need to be in parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, at ease, or in calmness, or in homeostasis. So COVID is a great example of what happened to a world during a pandemic. And that was, we had lots of problems, lots of isolation, lots of stress, lots of uncertainty. But you can look at your day-to-day work life and say, oh my gosh, the economy is in trouble right now, and I'm stressed out over that. Or I don't feel safe in my job, or our company's changing leadership, and I feel like I'm not standing on firm ground. The power is recognizing when you're in isolation, stress, or uncertainty, or your core fundamental needs are not being met, or your spiritual needs are not being met, or your values are not being met. Some people don't even know what their values are. So when I say, well, what value was stepped over? They're like, what do you mean, what value? I haven't even done the work to isolate my values. So part of living a response agile life is knowing what your purpose is, what your calling is, knowing what your values are, knowing what your 550 is. And so what I mean by 550 is, what's your joy state? Dave Hawkins, who's an original researcher and a very deep domain expertise in neuroscience and happiness, has done studies on power versus force, and the energy that emits from a human being when we're really low, like in a state of isolation, stress, uncertainty, chaos, agitation, fear, hopelessness, is low levels. The state when we're in the state of love, of affinity, of contribution, of growth, is like at 1,000. 550 is the magic number. This is where we experience happiness. In order to put your own oxygen mask on, you have to know what it is. What's your joy state? What, when you're doing, does time stop? What's your calling? What's your reason for being? What's your aim in life? And then what are the things you need to do to keep yourself there? We're going to get into that a little bit later, but it's important to mention it now. If you want to be response agile, you need to know what quality of life for you looks like, what your values are, what your calling is, your purpose, what things that you do light you up, take your breath away, give you joy, give you bliss. And then you can recognize when you're not there. And when you can recognize when you're not there, you can do something about it. Make sense? Good. So truth is, we wish life was this straight line up. We all do. We think this is the way life should be, but how life actually is, and how leadership actually is you're going along, you're doing a good job, and then there's a recession and you hit bottom, and the company hits bottom, and there's lots of stress, lots of pressure. Maybe you even leave your job. You get back up, new job, new opportunity, maybe new product launch, and you're rolling along, and all of a sudden the bridge is out. And you got to think of a new way. You got to innovate beyond that. And you finally get back up, and boom, a pandemic happens. And you think it's over, but it's not over. Time always changes, and you get over it, and then you're on track, and another recession. And this is truth. If you've been in business longer than 2 decades, you have been through 2 or 3 recessions and lots of challenges, from supply chain to policy change to, you name it. We've had massive amounts of challenge. I'm 58, 59. And over my career, I think I've been through 7 economic challenges. We've been through 9/11. We've been through the pandemic, like everybody my age, and through the supply chain disaster. When I was in staffing, there were like shortages of people or shortages of jobs. This is just what reality is. And we need to learn to be with reality. Rocks are hard, water's wet, the numbers tell the story, and we need to be with what's real. And then we need to work on our response or our reaction to what's real. That's what emotional intelligence is. So there's 4 quotients that impact your ability to navigate stress, pressure, uncertainty, and to be the best that you can be. And one of them is intellectual. What are you learning? Are you a reader? If you're not a reader, be a listener. Listen to audiobooks, but 4 leadership books a year, or 4 personal well-being books a year. Keep your mind in the growth mindset. Now, if you study Power versus Force, or the 7 levels of individual, group, or organizational effectiveness, or the vibrational scale of joy, you'll see that when you're in learning mode, you're actually happier. So if you take on 4 books a year that helps you learn new things, or 4 classes a year, you will be in the intellectual ripe zone. As I'm aging, I'm still young enough, and there is studies that say when people watch too much TV, watch too much news, have too many shows that they used to call it the boob tube for a reason. This muscle here, your prefrontal cortex, gets lazy, and you lose your intellectual sharpness. Character. Do I know my values? Have I done the work to know what I care about, what's important to me? Am I connected to my company values? Do I resonate with them? Do I live true? Mind, body, which includes heart and gut, and heart. Am I in alignment with my values? Am I living true? Because if I'm not, leads to unhappiness, also leads to a lack of grounding and an inability to respond, and a real reactionary state. Emotional is the intelligence of knowing, holy crap, I got to face something I don't want to do. I got to go lay people off. I got to go force rank performance. I have to stop a product line, and it's going to mean 300 people are out of work, or I have to sell my company, or somebody's retiring, or I have a new leader, but shit's going to hit the fan, and I need to be able to lead powerfully through that rather than be a victim because of it. That's emotional intelligence. Or the wife or husband tells you something you really don't want to hear, or the teacher calls from school, or something bad happened. It's how neutral can you be? It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not a reaction waiting to happen. And when you're a reaction waiting to happen, people are scared of you and they don't tell you the truth. And I used to be that person. I could recognize that person. Not healthy, and not healthy for culture, not healthy for health, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Emotional intelligence, if you don't do it for others, do it for yourself, because it keeps you in a healthy state of mind, and a healthy state of mind is a healthy body. We'll talk about that more soon. Relationships. This is the quality of my relationships. How well do I create relationships? How well do I nurture those relationships? How well do I recalibrate those relationships when there are breakdowns? What is my relationship with my word? Do I make promises I keep, or do I make promises I don't keep, but I think that if I have a good enough excuse, I'll get off the hook? That breaks down trust, and that breaks down relationships. So these 4 quotients: intellectual, character, emotional, and relationships, there's a whole body of work just in these areas. And I invite you to define for yourself, what does intellectual growth look like? What does intellectual effectiveness look like? If you're older, more mature, you're more in tune with, holy crap, dementia could start coming up at 70 or 80, or for some people, even in their 60s. What do I do to keep the brain fresh? Character. What are my values? What are my company values? What does that mean to me? What are the values I hold true? And how do I need to behave so I'm living true to those values? Emotional. What sets me off? What triggers me? What pisses me off? What makes me afraid? And am I in communication so that with myself and others, so that I don't have to go there? I don't have to get crazy. When people withhold their upsets, it almost always turns into a blow up. So if you make me mad and I don't tell you, hey man, you didn't do what you said, I'm really upset. One day I am gonna lash out at you and you're gonna go, where did this come from? It always came from something that happened that I didn't deal with. Same thing when I lash out at myself. And relationships, again, it's all about building trust. Fernando Flores, it's a great book. We have a resource library in our university. We do book reviews. If you don't want to read Building Trust, I don't think you can listen to it. I don't think it's on audio, but you can watch the book review. Building trust and building relationships is one of the most important elements in living a happy life. We are the sum of our relationships. If we don't have any, that impacts us. And even studies on joy and happiness and longevity, being in relationship, maybe not intimate, although intimate is that's the epitome, that's the ultra winner, but being in relationship with others, having community is about mental health. It's about happiness, and it's about living in the joy state. So those are the 4 quotients impacting leadership effectiveness, and I'm going to say impacting life effectiveness. What gets in the way? What gets in the way is when we're triggered. I talked about that a little bit. We have an amygdala. This is an almond-shaped organ here, and here it goes right in the middle, and you could see it on the screen. Amygdala, that is this organ that tells your brain you're in trouble. Warning, Will Rogers, warning, some imminent doom is going to happen. You better protect yourself, or you better put up your dukes, or you better run away and hide because the saber-toothed tiger's coming to get you. This is the only part, the amygdala is the only part of the human that has not evolved with time. It's there to protect us. But when the amygdala is in overdrive, when it's overreactive, which some people have an overreactive amygdala, and you need to train your brain to calm down, to rest and digest, to soothe itself. You need to train the sympathetic nervous system to lower its impact, and the parasympathetic nervous system to calm you down. Things like yoga, things like meditation, things like walking, things like not multitasking, things like a hug, a good book will all calm you down. Learning to breathe, Max Strom, A Life Worth Breathing, teaches you how to turn on your sympathetic nervous system and train that amygdala to kind of grow up and evolve. But the amygdala is not all bad. It tells us when we're in trouble and when we need to react. Problem is, reacting with a guy putting a gun to our head is different than reacting when the boss calls us up and says, we need to have the meeting about your performance. Or we have to have layoffs and everybody freaks out, doesn't do it, doesn't take action fast enough. And now you got to lay twice as many people off because you weren't proactive. And this happens in companies of all sizes, public, private, all the time. So back to this, we've already talked about values in the slide before, but your values, what you hold to be true, is intrinsic to your motivation. What do I value? I value freedom. I value contribution. I value generosity. I value love. I value relationships. I value honesty. If I'm in a relationship with somebody who is not honest, or who lies, or who doesn't take responsibility, I'm not in relationship with them very long, because it's incongruent with who I am. I'll take mistakes any day. I won't take lying about mistakes. I won't take somebody who stands up in front of the room like a client and says, I want a great culture and I believe in integrity, and then he's sleeping with staff behind everybody's back. No, that's a deal breaker for me, because it's part of my intrinsic values. So here's what you need to know. Your values are your rocket fuel. Your values are what keeps you going in the face of adversity, stress, and pressure. It's what you can hold on to. And rituals or daily habits that you put into your life that reflect your values will keep you stronger. When you honor your values and you put habits in place or daily rituals in place that sharpen that saw and align you with your values, much like Stephen Covey says, it will keep you effective. And sharpening your saw isn't just about reading books, it's about living true. So your values are the strongest current running through your body. It's that energy force. Your amygdala is there to tell you when you're in trouble, and it's overreactive. There's not one trained amygdala on the planet. Even people like Deepak Chopra and Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama will say there's times that they mess up. They make big mistakes because they are human and humans are flawed. When that amygdala is not disciplined, it gets us into trouble. We overreact or we act in ways that are not so great. Our cortex, this part of our brain, is where all of our programmed behaviors come from. You might not know that 95% of your behaviors and your programming was hypnotized. Your brain is in a hypnotic state from third trimester to 7 years old. So you're watching your parents and the brain doesn't even know it's doing it, but you're being hypnotized by nature so that you can survive. And so you learn your hypnotic behaviors from mom or dad, whether you like them or not. They're embedded in there. And what it takes is conscious behavior to change them. But the behaviors are like on a loop. So whatever you have learned to, however you've learned to cope and have be your strengths in life, it's an automatic loop. It's unconscious programming, like autopilot. That comes from your cortex. Your prefrontal cortex says, hey, Maji, wake up. That pre-programmed behavior is not appropriate right now. You need to operate from your values in alignment, but it takes a healthy prefrontal cortex to even know that that's part of the conversation. So this is just an intro. In summary, you've got a prefrontal cortex. All new knowledge comes in through here. How well you remember your new knowledge allows you to take those arrows out of the quiver and use them to get a bullseye when you need. Your cortex is pre-programmed behaviors. Under the age of 7, most of your programming got programmed. Your prefrontal cortex allows you to rewrite the program, along with your highest level of intelligence, which is kind of enlightenment, self-actualization. Amygdala is here to tell you when you're in trouble. And if your amygdala is not trained, it will ruin your life. It will have you be type A about everything, even when it's not appropriate. And your structural brain houses your values, which are your rocket fuel. So now that you know this, you can do some more research on neuroplasticity, retraining the brain, or you can just do more research on how the brain impacts performance. And this is an introductory session to emotional intelligence, response agility, and understanding how our brain works. So how it all works together, I kind of just said this, but I'll recap it. Values and motivators are at the center of who we are. This is our intrinsic drive. Our work style and our behaviors don't have to run us. We could let them run us if we are on autopilot, and we can upgrade the program anytime we see by learning new competencies. Our capacity is what we have when we're awake and aware. We're conscious. We're not on autopilot, and we're seeing everything there is to see. Our dimensional balance is the part of us that sees the work that we have to do, the people who have to do it, and the big picture of that work and the people and how it all fits together. So it's our balanced decision making. This is in leadership, of the family, in leadership at work, in the community, in our volunteer work. Can we see the whole picture? Our emotional balance is our relationship with the leader within. How well we see ourself, our power, our self-authority, how well we see our strengths and our weaknesses. Do we believe in ourselves? Our role awareness is how well we see the roles that we play and how congruently we're operating in them and how clear we are. And our future, our future, like, do we see a positive future? That all has to do with our emotions. If we don't see a positive future, if we're unclear of our job, if we don't believe in ourselves and we're walking around with the imposter syndrome, our emotional balance is not, it's off balance. If we cannot see the whole picture at work, if we cannot see the work that has to get done, the people who have to do it, and the big picture, we make bad decisions. When we are on, when we've got our superpowers consciously running and not on autopilot, we see the big picture, we see ourselves, and we know what to do. And that's called empowered. So let's talk about the 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness. These 7 levels are derived from Dave Hawkins' work on power versus force. And again, we're talking about the vibrational scale of energy, all energy. You don't even have to be a science guy or in quantum physics to just look at energy, and energy is more powerful than matter. And we are energetic beings, and our behavior emanates energy to other people. We watch the news. Remember, during the pandemic, you turned on the news and within minutes, you felt your heart racing faster or your face flush, palms sweaty, like, holy crap, what's happening? That's your amygdala saying you got to run for cover. So when we're below the line, we don't have power. We don't have freedom. We are protecting or fighting or hiding. So the lowest level of effectiveness is hopelessness. The second level up is fear, and the third level is frustration. Now, frustration is the highest level of effectiveness, but we're doing it with force, and we're pissed off and angry and pushing people out of the way and put up your dukes and I'm right and you're wrong. And it's not fun to live there. And it's not fun to live with people who live there. It's actually painful, especially when you've learned life doesn't have to be that way. You don't need that drama. Fear is all self-protection. You're holding yourself back. You're like paralyzed and you can't think because you've got so much adrenaline and so much cortisol racing through your body that you can only see the narrow perspective that you have, and that's anything below the line. And hopelessness, guys, if you're in hopelessness and you're there too long, that leads to depression. That's complete despair, disempowerment, like waiting to die or waiting to get fired if you're in a job. Not good places to be, and it's ineffective. And I have had people argue with me, send me emails. I'm very frustrated and I'm very effective. I said, okay, how's your relationship with your spouse? Well, this is work. We're not talking about that. Well, wherever you are, there you go. So if you look around you at the relationships you have in life, and if things are not working, you're probably below the line. And while you might be effective in 1 or 2 areas, you are not effective in happiness, health, stability, longevity, and stress, which is below the line, causes dis-ease. And the more research that you do on health, like there's a book, Biology of Belief, by Bruce Lipton. I want to do a book review on that. It's on my list. Bruce talks about how cells have membranes. We all know that. But Bruce's discovery is around each cell is this membrane, which has got receptors. And those receptors are looking out at the environment and changing the molecular level of that cell based on what's happening in the environment. So now they're doing research on sick people, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all caused by lack of homeostasis in the body, caused because of stress. Now, you might say, well, cancer's in the genes. It's actually not. More and more research is coming out that cancer is environmental. Now, I could have the exact same diet as my twin sister, which I don't have one. We could have grown up in the same family, but I have a stronger ability to navigate stress, and she holds stress in, and she holds that stress in, and it eats her alive. She gets cancer. I'm not saying I'm never going to get sick, but I have the knowledge to know how to keep myself healthy. And what I am here to share with you is if you can keep yourself above the line, you will be happier and healthier and have more ease and less dis-ease in your body. And a happy body is a happy mind, and a happy mind and a happy body is a happy life, and a happy heart and happy gut and happy head and happy everything else. So let's talk about what these really mean. When you're in hopeless, you can only access happiness 1 to 5% of the time. 1 to 5% of the time, which means you're unhappy could be 99 to 95% of the time. Hopelessness is you coiled in, avoiding, given up. The time in my life when I experienced real hopelessness was really probably only one time that I am aware of, because sometimes when you're in hopelessness, you're not aware. And it was 2014, and we were building this software. It was going to be keen hire. It was going to be a revolutionary way to consciously hire people. And I got into a partnership with someone, and I did not do the due diligence on this guy's integrity or work history or how he leads. He had the best proposal, and I took it. So I was not aligned with my values. Warning 1. Anyway, long story short, at the end of the year, he fired my partner, didn't pay her. She had to do a wage claim. And when I questioned it, he said, question me and you're next. I was so distraught, I couldn't even get out of bed. I was literally laying in bed at 11 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't question anything. And there was more going on, like not just not paying people. He was changing what the software was going to do and had no validation that it worked and wanted me to lie. And it was just a shit show. And I was facing the fact that I was going to lose $1 million. My investment, all my time. My son worked there, and I was at an absolute loss of what to do. And it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm laying in bed, literally with the covers over my head, and it's summertime. My son walks in the door, and he said, "What are you doing?" He's about 21 at this time, maybe 24, young. And I said, "I've screwed up. I made a bad decision. I didn't honor my values. I lost my partner, blah, 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 blah." And he goes, "The woman who raised me would never lay in bed and be a victim. The woman who raised me would go do something about it." And I got up and I did something about it. I did what all good people would do. And I called a therapist, and I went to see the therapist. I said, "I need Prozac. I need something. I don't know what to do." He says, "Honey, you don't need Prozac. And you don't need therapy. You need a lawyer." And I couldn't have seen any of that from that state of hopelessness. I was so in my own head and so concerned about the mistakes that I made that I couldn't see a positive future at all. I would have never thought about a lawsuit. Well, I not only filed a lawsuit, I won, because the guy was a bad man and he took what didn't belong to him, and he was not paying people, and he was not honest. But look for yourself. When have you been in complete despair? When you saw no hope, no possibility? During the pandemic, many companies were in hopelessness. Many people, many healthcare workers were in hopelessness. And if you stay too long, like I said earlier, it could be depression. So when you are in hopelessness, the thing to do is call for help. Get help. Call your best friend, call your therapist. If you're really deeply hopeless, don't call your coach, because they won't know what to do, but get help, get support, because sometimes you can't pull yourself out of it. Now, my son meeting me where I needed to be met, because he knew me better than anyone at that point, was what it did for me. But not all of you have kids that would say that to you, or even close family members. So let's talk about fear. In fear, you can be happy 9 to 10% of the time, but 90% of the time you're unhappy, which means you're not productive, which means you're spinning out. You've got the brain searching for answers and you don't have answers. And remember, you're afraid of something terrible happening, almost certain attack, loss, or disappointment. So you've got high doses of adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine warning you something bad is going to happen, and you don't even have the time to know it's happening, but you're in protective mode. And when you're in protective mode, you're under the line. And if you're right hemisphere dominant, you go into overwhelm. And if you're left hemisphere dominant, you go into rigidity. And either one of those places, you can't see anything but your own perspective. Now we'll go to frustration, which is the highest level of ineffectiveness. You can be happy 12 to 22% of the time, but you're pissed off, upset, angry, want people to behave differently, Xing them out of the way, elbowing, picking a fight. Opposition is high during frustration. Doing things that are not necessarily kind happens in frustration, high annoyance level. So I want to go back. I missed something with fear. So I just want to say it. In fear, the thing to do is make a list of what's not working and make a list of the things that could potentially work. That's one example of what to do in fear. Now, if you're hyperventilating, breathing is not necessarily the best thing to do. When you're somebody says breathe, you're like, I can't breathe. But a walk with your dog, with your pet, petting an animal if you have an animal, embracing a friend, making a list is very good because it taps you into a different part of your brain. And you have to rewire yourself. If you're left hemisphere dominant and you're in fear, you connect with people because it's the opposite side of the brain, which balances you out. If you're right hemisphere dominant and you're in overwhelm, coming up with a list of things you can do will calm you down. It's called diagonal thinking. It's a different training that we have for advanced members of our community. But this is all part of homeostasis. So in frustration, your energy's high, it's forceful. The thing to do in frustration is meet your energy where it is. Maybe you go running. Maybe you go on a brisk walk. You get your cardio up. You get a punching bag and punch it out like Rocky. But you don't take a soft approach to frustration. Instead of taking it out on others, go expel that energy on something positive, because that's what you need to do to calm yourself down. Now, many people say, well, Maji, frustration is good for our company. We make things happen. Yeah, you make things happen, but you probably are not coming up with systemic solutions that are good for the long term, because in frustration, in fear, and in hopelessness, you have no access to your prefrontal cortex, which means you have no access to critical thinking. So you turn on one light switch, fix one problem, create three others. That's why that happens, because physiologically, you have no access to your critical thinker. Not because you're stupid, not because you're dumb, not because you're incapable. It's because the amygdala is telling the brain you aren't capable right now because you're under pressure. So it's flooding you and it's preventing that critical thinking from happening. So that is frustration. So we've talked a little bit before about the average human being. The National Science Institute says the average human being has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, but 85% of them are negative and repetitive. So going into life on autopilot is setting you up to be a marketing, media, advertisement stream, because you're already spun out, you're already stressed out, and then they throw you an ad that says, stressed out, upset, just take Vivarin and revive with Vivarin. Or don't like your body, take a pill and get thin. Don't like your energy, can't have sex, we got a pill for this and a pill for that. Advertisers know that the human condition is to be in lack. Advertisers, media know that we're already reactive, waiting to happen. It's part of the chemistry of our brain. So we have to be stronger than those advertisers. We need to be more awake, more alert, more aware that, holy cow, 95% of the time, my subconscious programming is running me. So I got to figure out what that subconscious programming is. And I got to be aware when I'm triggered, because when I'm triggered, I'm not my best self. When I'm triggered, I don't create extraordinary relationships. I don't have any really good ideas, and I'm not very fun to be around. So I don't want to be that way. But first, you have to realize That's part of the human condition. And knowing it's part of the human condition gives you power, empowerment. So different ways people can get into an amygdala hijack. The amygdala hijack is the word for the, the little organ going off, telling your brain, warning, warning, you're in trouble, and then having your brain tell your adrenals big problems. So it could be the boss is having it out at you, screaming and yelling, things are not going well. He's in an amygdala hijack, and everybody he interacts with is going to be in one too, because his force and his overuse of power will trigger fear. Being told what you're doing wrong up here with this lady screaming and the other one's like cowering. Oh my God, this guy's got too much to do. He's on overdrive. Or when you feel like you're being judged and evaluated, either dating or interviewing, boy, the amygdala goes wild. And timelines. Some people are terrible with deadlines. Other people power up and get aggressive. But if you're not going to meet the deadline, boy, that amygdala takes you for a wild ride. This is normal. This is human behavior. Your job is to learn how to be bigger than that human reactionary evolutionary vehicle that's there to help you stay safe and to know to run out of the way. But if there is no saber-toothed tiger, if there's no, animal that's going to eat you, maybe you don't need to run out of the way. Maybe you need to calm yourself down. Get yourself into homeostasis so you can think straight. When your body is in rest and digest, when you take those slow, methodical breaths, everything comes back online, including your prefrontal cortex. One of the things that we recommend many people do before they even have meetings, or they even start talking about the things that they need to do at work to change the trajectory. Let's say things are not going well, so they got to get grounded before they start. They have to get everybody present so people can have the level of conversation with the level of emotional stability they need to make good decisions. So much of our behavior is reactive. As I've said, 95% of the way we behave is programmed from last trimester to 7 years old. We are all in a hypnotic state. It's what trains us to survive. And we're just taking in whatever we're seeing on TV. It's why they're now saying, don't let your kid watch TV first year of life, because you don't know what messaging they're getting. Hypnotic stage of our development. And we're picking up best and worst of mom, best and worst of dad, best and worst of grandpa, grandma, neighbor, the milkman, whoever. And it's teaching us how to be. So life happens, that's stimuli. And then there's a response. If you're healthy, response, I'm going to respond like an adult, or a reaction. I have to be afraid, or I have to be mad. Automatic reactions to stimuli are caused by a reactive brain, which is subconscious, and it's automatic programming. And it's due to this amygdala, this whatever happened in our life in those first 7 years, things happen that set our little kid off. Like we put our hand on the oven and we got yelled at, and oh my God, I never want to do that again. Or we ran across the street and our mother yanked us back, or our parents got in a fight and we thought it was about us, because that's what little kids do. There's so much training in this now, whether it's the Hoffman process or landmark education, or a book called Invisible Power, or Michael Neal has a book called, I don't remember the name of it, but Michael Neal has a book. No, just erase that part. Or Invisible Power, or Joe Dispenza, Change Your Mind, Change Your Life. We have stimuli, and stimuli is going to keep coming. And then either we have a response, we open to it, doesn't mean we're accepting of it, but we're not reactive, or we react. And remember, it's your programming. It's your subconscious program. And the beauty of being a human being and not an animal is, as a human being, we have human spirit, conscious choice, and we could choose to respond versus react. We're not a robot. We can respond. Our child self reacted because it didn't know any better. So self-management requires you to wake up to your consciousness and choose. Between stimuli and response, there's a place. And in that place is our power, conscious choice. I'm going to respond. I'm not going to react. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish prisoner of war with the in the German prison camps. And he had this insight years and years and years and years ago, like in the 40s, that I don't have to be reactive to what's happening. I can tap into my highest level of conscious power. So we have an impulse and an emotion, and then we react. But before we react, we can have the impulse and we could say, no, I want something better. So a story in my own life, I was just learning this. I was about 48 years old. Actually, not true. 38 years old and going through a divorce. And we still lived together and we were still having parties. We're trying to do the right thing for the kids. But he started insulting me publicly, which I, whether you could tell or not on this video, I don't like public insults. It hurts my feelings. So I was talking to my friend about the fact that I'm going to do a triathlon, and she's an extremely fit triathlete. And he comes along and he says, what makes you think in front of other people, what makes you think you could ever do a triathlon? And I saw myself, I felt the impulse and I felt the emotion of wanting to reach out and strangle his neck, even though he's a lot bigger than me. And I actually also saw myself pull back the reaction, take a breath. And I said, it's so interesting to hear how little belief you have in my ability. Now, maybe that was even a wrong thing to say, but it was way better than fuck off, which is what I wanted to say. But this is what happens at work. We got a lot of pressure. We want to react. We have an impulse. We attack people. People go into threat, or nobody says a word to us, but we sense the energy and we get threatened, or we fail to do something we said we would do. And then we hide out and pretend that we never said it. Or the boss says, we got to make some difficult decisions. And we go into projection, reflection of our past, and we start reacting about something that's not even happening right now. So I think it's a good time to ask yourself, what triggers you? And what kind of reactions do you have that are not healthy for you and not healthy for people around you? And what would be an alternative way of being? In our leadership training, we have Responsibility, which is a 2.5-hour training. This is an hour prelude, preview, overview. But we have a document called the Responsibility Reprogram the Program. And you can actually do it, but it takes some work. This is how I act now or react. This is what my values are. This is what my calling is. This is how I want to respond. And then what are the habits that I need to build to learn to respond that way, so I'm not reaction waiting to happen? Because here's the thing, if you're a hothead, people stop talking to you. People clue you out. People don't tell you what's really going on. Relationships have breakdowns. There's always drama. And being a hothead in a world that's very hot is not going to be healthy. And there's a great book that you can read also. I know I give a lot of book recommendations. It's called The Myth of Normal in a Toxic Society. And it talks about what we need to do to keep ourselves healthy and above the proverbial line of power and freedom. So let's talk about above the line. And above the line, you have courage, engagement, innovation, and synchronicity. When you are above the line, your body is releasing dopamine. It's releasing oxytocin, the love hormone. It's releasing serotonin. And there's brain hacks in our online university that tell you how to do hacks to get your brain in the right place. But when you're above the line, remember below the line, you were closed off. When you're above the line, you see a powerful future, open to ideas, open to other people's input. And it's a very good place to be. And it's just a place of happiness, engagement, joy, connection, and power, fulfillment, self-expression. So let's talk about what happens when we're encouraged. We experience happiness 55 to 60% of the time. When we're happy, we're productive. When we're productive, we're contributing. We feel better about ourselves. Our basic human needs are met because we've got significance. we've got some certainty, we've got some novelty, and we've got connection. When we believe in a future, like I believed when I signed up for that triathlon that I just shared about, I believed I could do it or I wouldn't have signed up. I am going to walk this year, the El Camino, only half of it, but 15 miles a day. And I'm nervous, but I'm doing it. And I believe in the future. I believe that when I am done with that Camino, I will have trained myself to work through uncomfortableness, dissatisfaction, the low self saying, I don't think I can do it, or I'm lost. And I will have built a discipline up that'll pay off the rest of my life. So courage is an innate belief in a future despite current evidence that that future is possible. When you're encouraged, you believe, whether you believe in your company vision or you believe in yourself, the leader within, you have belief, self-belief in the possibility of a bright future. Engagement, you experience happiness 78 to 81% of the time. You are all in. You're not thinking about limits and detriments. You're thinking about how you can contribute, how you can make a difference, and what skills you could bring to the table. And you're in that state of joy, as we talked about before, the 550. In a state of innovation, you're happy 82 to 89% of the time. You are expanding your capacity to think, to solve problems. You're working with others. You're collaborating. You're connecting. You're self-actualizing. Of course, you're happy. You're coming up with new things. And it's not a state of, oh my God, I have to fix this and I don't know how. It's a state of, wow, I get to create something that's never been created before. And I get to do it with my colleagues. And we're all tapping in to our highest level of intelligence. In the state of synchronicity, it's like being on a dance team or a symphony when everybody's playing together, or a rowing team. You experience happiness 89 to 100% of the time. This is total at peace, at ease. An understanding in synchronicity is that whatever happens is happening for me. I have the ability to see the light, to see the silver lining in anything that's going on. And I have the ability to learn the lessons I need to learn. So once you know where you want to be on the 7 levels, and once you know where you are, you have more freedom to recognize when you're offline, recognize when you're below the line, and do what you need to do to get above the line. Something I want to share with you that I learned at Canyon Ranch as a customer, not a speaker, is when we are below the line, when we're in fear, when we're in frustration or hopelessness, and our sympathetic nervous system has taken over and our thoughts are running awry, it's like the snow globe. All of these thoughts are spinning out in our brain and we can't think straight. And we have to get ourselves to the point that the thoughts settle down and are calmed down so we could see the truth. We could see what's really happening. And we can let our body get into this state of relaxation. When we are below the line, instead of looking out at the binoculars and seeing the future, or seeing what we see, seeing what's in the present right now, our binoculars are turned inside out, and all we could see is a tiny pinhole of our perspective, of our reality, which is not healthy and not what you need to create the kind of life you want, where you have power and freedom of choice and power and freedom in living the way you want to live. Another thing to look at is every person has their own perspective of what's happening at any moment in time. We all have a wall of thought. So I have a way, I have a past, you have a past, we all have a past. I have a way that I look at life. When my boss talks to me this way, it means something. When my boyfriend talks to me this way, it means something. When my kids or my grandkids or my mother talks to me in a certain way, it means something. And I have my wall of thought about every single thing on the planet. I have an opinion, I have feelings about it, and often I am unaware that so does everybody else I'm working with. So my wall of thought is perspective A, but often when I'm at work or at home, I don't realize or don't even give myself the time to realize, whoa, 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 I have my wall of thought, but Mary has her wall of thought, and John has his wall of thought, and Susie has her wall of thought. And so you've got 4 different perspectives, 4 different belief systems, 4 different thoughts about everything that's going on. And part of being response agile is to calm down, get the snow globe calm, take a deep breath and say, this is how I'm feeling what's happening with you guys. What are your point of view? What is your perspective? That's the power in getting in a state of homeostasis and getting other people, because then you could see where they're coming from and get them into a good space before you start asking for things from people. So the model of leadership that Keen Alignment trains to in our Leadership Accelerator in 21st Century online training is derived from the coactive leadership model for CTI. We've changed it a little bit to fit the neuroscience of what we do, but it begins with the leader within. And the leader within is the one with the self-authority, the self-belief, who's taking care of themselves, who's retraining their brain, who understands that we're mostly subconscious programming and we have to rewrite the program. In order to lead effectively from the front and to be a visionary and to take people somewhere, first you got to be aware of what's going on with you. And then in order to be a leader from the side, you have to understand your impact on others and the basic work of how do I be a healthy, high performance, intentional human being. Same with leading from behind and same with leading from the field. So the leader within, number one priority for the leader within is to retrain your brain so that you can be aware and awake to your subconscious programming, and you can live into and act out and develop the discipline to develop yourself in leadership strengths. So because you're watching this training, we're going to give you an opportunity to take a free leadership assessment. We charge for debriefs, but you can get this and read it yourself. 79 pages, text IMX to 66866. It will evaluate you in 79 areas of leadership and give you very specific feedback on how you are at leading from the front, how you are at leading from the side, how you are at leading from behind, and how you are at leading from the field, and how you are at leading from within. So those 7 categories all link up and sync up to the diagram I just showed you on the leadership model we use. So you're going to look at how you are in terms of envisioning an outcome, understanding your supporters, communicating your vision, serving others, inspiring others, guiding others, and developing yourself. This is part of the self-awareness. Now, I do want to warn you that the 2 lowest scores globally are accountability for others and self-control. Self-control is your ability to be response agile. Self-control is this overactive. If you don't have self-control, an overactive amygdala, even though you might not blow up outside, you might spin out inside. And so watch for your scores in that area. Watch for your scores on personal accountability, on emotional control, on self-control, on self-awareness, on self-belief, because all of those, that's all an inside job. The other things, they can all get handled after the inside job gets taken care of. So leadership effectiveness is being able to know yourself, to be responsible for yourself, and to understand where your strengths and weaknesses lie. This is our prefrontal cortex, our brain, our executive brain. We have a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. Effective leadership is integration of both left and right hemispheres. Right hemisphere, we've got the birds because it's freedom. We can see the whole picture. We see unity. We see empowerment. We see empathy. We see people. We care. Left hemisphere over there actually is systems, structure, architecture, having a plan, having reasons, having data. Well, one side and not the other side is insufficient to lead in today's world. But the truth is, we all have subconscious programming that helps us favor a side of the equation. Growth, development, emotional maturity is integrating both. So for your responsibility, so what's your vision for your life? Who is it that you want to be as a leader? What is your calling? What's your reason for being? I've talked about that earlier in the training, and it really is the ultimate intent for you is, what am I up to? What is my aim? And that is what will carry you through the day in developing yourself as the kind of person who can respond instead of react. So you can take time now, or you can watch our Elevate Leadership training. And I actually go through an entire formula of how to create your calling or your vision for your life. Next is, what are your values? What do you value? What ways of being are you committed to? Is integrity a core value, or accountability, or contribution, or love, or generosity, or teamwork, or partnership? It can't be everything. Pick your top 5. And we have a downloadable worksheet if you'd like support with that in our Elevate Leadership, whole downloadable about how to determine your values. And then we have live training and coaching, and our coaches, our whole first 4 months of coaching is working on the leader within, because we can't give you the muscles you need if you're not clear on who you are. All development begins with the leader within. So your values are that which you hold true, that which if it gets not respected, you feel triggered. So that's important. Last part of this training is the 5 keys to neuroplasticity. 5 ways you can retrain your brain. Neuroplasticity is reprogramming the program. 5 keys. Now there's way more, but this is the top 5. You got to get enough sleep. 7 to 8 hours a night, real sleep, not waking up all the time. Novelty, which we've got the paints, doing something new to expand your horizons, traveling to new places, eating different kinds of food, eating from the sun, nutrition, eating the right foods that help the body stay in homeostasis. By the way, big connection between the gut and the head. There's books right now about the heart and the gut the head and the gut connection, and like thinking and clear thinking is impacted by what you eat, your fuel. Makes sense, right? Exercise, really exercising, getting the cardio up, whether it's walking, running, cycling, hiking, doing yoga. The body needs to move a minimum of 30 minutes a day. If the body is not moving, stiffens up, body stiffens up, mind stiffens up. And then mindfulness, whether it's staring at a doorknob or meditating or mindfully washing dishes, training our brain to focus. I talked earlier about the Flow Collective, Flow Research. This is people who are operating in the zone. And there's a great book, we're going to do a book review on, called Flow. And then there's the Flow Collective, which you can take training in. But it will tell you to do all these things. These are the 5 keys to reprogramming the program. Multitasking is the antithesis of response agility. You can't learn to be response agile if you're hyper amygdala, adrenaline biased, and you've always got to be doing 10 different things at one time. It's just not possible. So 5 keys to neuroplasticity. Take time, do an inventory, do your values, do your mission or your vision for your life, your ultimate intent. Look at what habits you need to build so you can be more response agile. Use the barometer of the 7 levels to know when you're on track or off track. And when you're off track, tap into a different part of your brain, or just go back to those daily rituals of breathing and mindfulness, or eating right, or exercising, or getting enough rest, or doing something fun like painting or learning a new language that taps your brain into a higher level of thinking. So here's what we talked about today: how to respond to adversity, stress, and pressure with power and ease. It's in the 7 levels, and it's in conscious use of self, which is rewriting the program. Who do I want to be? What is important to me? And knowing and trusting that you have all the power you need to live consciously. In my book, Ignite Culture, the whole first 5 chapters are about this exact thing, and we'll go into great detail in the masterclass for Ignite Culture. I think I said Ignite Power, but the book is Ignite Culture. We also have a book coming out for Ignite Power, but we're not doing that now. Key points to this training: navigate change thoughtfully and effectively, and taking ownership of your experiences and recalibrating as needed. Make a list of the things that trigger you. Know when you're triggered and know what you need to do to calm down your sympathetic nervous system so your parasympathetic nervous system can ease, calm, rest, digest, and open up your aperture so you can see other perspectives. Thank you for being with me here today. If you want anything else, send us emails, send us notes, take part in our online leadership university. We look forward to hearing from you more.